Here's a paraphrased conversation that happened recently in my office. Them. Do you have a few minutes? I fucked something up and need to tell you about it. Me. Sit down. Them. I fucked up blank. Blah, blah, blah. I'm sorry. Blah, blah, blah. Here's how I'm fixing it. Me. Thanks for telling me. This conversation's gonna be so much easier because you took ownership. Blah, 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 blah. Have a great day. In a lot of organizations, people hide mistakes, but not at goodr. It's not uncommon for someone to walk into my office or up to their boss and start a conversation by saying, I funked something up and need to tell you about it. I love when this happens because the second a person takes ownership, they create a major connection point between the two of us. And the second I respond in a calm, curious way, I create connection back. Now imagine a different scenario where I hear about an issue and I have to go find a person to ask what's going on. In that moment, that person drives a wedge between us instead of connecting us. Or imagine a third scenario where a person shows up to my office, takes ownership, and I act like a prick and go off the rails. In that moment, I drove a wedge between us and I made it very likely that person will never show up and ask to take ownership ever again. Connection is not created by one big party every year. Connection is created in thousands of continuous small moments in multiple ways all the time. We define connection at goodr as engaging with others in a meaningful way. Let's talk about it.
Welcome to the Culture Goodr podcast with Stephen Leese and Shaun. This podcast is a behind the shades look at creating and changing culture inside of goodr sunglasses. You can live with the status quo, you can challenge the status quo, or you can do what we do at goodr and status the quo challenge.
All right. So before we get to talking about connection, let's have a little brief connection of our own with a lightning round. What do you say? Cool. What was your favorite childhood TV show?
Oh, either Thundercats or DuckTales.
Wow. DuckTales. That's classic. How about now? What's your favorite show now?
Oh, anything Star Trek.
Heard that. What about big party or small gathering?
Well, it's really contextual. I will say I'll take both in certain situations.
Fair. All right. What is your favorite question to ask people that you've just met?
What's your story?
Why do you like that one?
Because what do you do is such an annoying question. And what's your story? People can take it any way they want.
Yeah. Nice. We'll log that away. And then which goodr stock was most memorable to you?
Do we count Flamingo Awards?
Sure.
I mean, probably the Flamingo Awards from this last year, but there's a lot of memories there. Yeah.
Yeah. Probably a few missing as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Nice. All right. So let's jump in here. So what does connection mean to you, Stephen?
Well, I mean, at goodr, we define connection as engaging with others in a meaningful way. And I mean, I would say the same thing. For me, it is way more about the small moments and in the continuous small moments, right? Brene Brown talks about the whole marble jar concept of every time somebody does something that's like connection based, they add marbles to the jar, and you just add a few marbles at a time.
Yeah.
But this idea that one happy hour a month is how you create connection, or being a mediocre partner, but then getting a really nice birthday present for your partner. It's not.
Yeah.
Like, to me, it is continuous small moments. And really, I think there's a lot of like being very present in those moments.
Agreed. Yeah, that's a nice add too, because easy to go through the motions, but people can tell if you're not really there.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So in your opinion, what's the difference between a relationship and a transaction, and what helps to create connection?
Right. Well, I think a relationship is connection. I don't know the textbook definition, but I would say that relationship, you are connected, so you're both have like an invested interest, and so relationship is connection. Transaction is like actually like an explicit exchange, right? And I think that's really important. Where in a relationship, in theory, you shouldn't be doing anything to get something back, but in a transaction, you absolutely are. Yeah, and that's okay too.
Right, for sure.
How about you?
Well, I agree with you there. I was going to go take us a little off script and kind of a rabbit hole here and see if we could identify, are we building a relationship, a connection with our customers in the way that we put packaging together and the way that we present the product, like that kind of thing? Does it feel too one-sided? Is that transactional, or is that connection building?
Yeah, I mean, probably could be both, right? I think that if we were to unpack that, absolutely all of our marketing, we our North Star there is creating connection, right? We believe in this idea of making somebody laugh, how powerful that is.
Yeah.
And we want people to feel a certain way when they open our product and put on glasses. So like, we are creating connection. We do have a relationship with our customers. And part of my role here at goodr is not only to look over the well-being of our staff, but it is our customers. And it actually is protecting the agreement that we have made to them as an escapism brand and all these things. And so I do believe it's both. And I think it depends on the customer, where I think some customers, I think we have a lot of hardcore fans and relationships with our customers that are in it and they love it. And I also think we have some that customers who saw us at a counter and they needed a pair of sunglasses and it's a transaction, right? So I think both are true. And I think it's the same way, right? I think the other rabbit hole you go down is like, well, is the staff here, or, you know, is there a relationship or is it a transaction because everybody gets paid?
Right.
And I would actually talk about it in the exact same way.
Yeah,
like it's both.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's both and it's always got to work in both cases, no matter what, right? To keep going.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. But I think like the easy thing would be in a relationship, I don't know, technically you're not expecting anything in return. In a transaction, you are.
Right, for sure. Otherwise, it's probably not a good deal.
Yeah, you get fucked over. Yeah,
right, exactly. All right, so what are some of the ways that we build shared connections here at goodr?
Well, I mean, it happens. We had this woman, Kelly Simpson, who's a doctoral student, did a research project on us. And she called out this thing that I never thought of before in her thesis about, you know, one way connections created is making, you know, having like things or making people laugh. And one thing that's very unique about goodr is everybody who applies here has to draw an octopus fighting a pirate. So we all have that in common. That's a weird little thing that we're connected by, right?
Yeah.
We all get tested for Enneagram, and so we all have an Enneagram type. So we are all connected by Enneagrams.
Yeah.
We also have fun titles here versus just a lame corporate title. We also do a thing during onboarding where there's a connection call where you have to talk to everybody in this company.
Yeah.
You have to set up in your first 3 months a 15-minute call and answer 4 questions. And so these things that are very unique to our culture, that if you peel back, like we all have all these things in common, which is really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing how many of those little things build up to where it kind of feels like a lot, you know?
Yeah.
And then after that, we create opportunities for people to connect and build on that, and like genuinely create true connection and strong relationships.
Yeah.
So what are some of those things that we built in as ways that we work, connection points, just as a part of how we do things at goodr?
Yeah, right. I mean, the connection calls, which I talked about.
Yep.
I mean, AMP, we have quarterly reviews. It's called AMP. And so during the same week, everybody's having a quarterly review, right? That is actually something that we're all connected with.
Yeah.
Which is a really weird thing to think about, but we all have that in common during that week. We all learn how to have tough conversations. We use a thing called the clearing. And so we are actually connected by that conversation style.
Yeah.
And then there's obviously the big things like goodr Stock, which is our quarterly summit. But I think it's all the other little things that connect us more. What are your thoughts?
As you were saying that, I was realizing during AMP week, a lot of the time I'll be, just sitting working while someone's coming out in between. So they've just given their presentation and they're waiting to receive scores and feedback, right? So I know what like limbo that feels like. You just suck, you're just floating around, wait, like this feels like a million years, or maybe it's 2 minutes. I don't know. So I always just like make chit chat with people, and like half the time they'll be like, get called back in and think, thanks, all right, that helped. It's just like getting through that little moment. And I think a lot of people find connection in those ways. Like we recognize our shared experiences, whether it's something that you're excited about or something that you're nervous about. And I see a lot of people show up for each other in those moments. It's kind of fun.
I agree. And it happens all the time. I mean, I think people ask each other for a lot of like help or feedback, whether it's reviewing a deck or a project, and like those are all tiny little moments of connection.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just showing respect to each other, like asking for your opinion or perspective on something. It all builds trust. It all builds connection.
For sure.
Yeah. Alrighty. So looking at just one connection point, that Goodr stock retreat you were talking about. So what kind of opportunities might be built into a big corporate retreat like that?
Well, I think for me, there's a bunch of, you have a ton of just really fun one-off conversations with people that aren't work related. And that's really cool, right? I mean, we create the space for those to happen.
Yeah.
And I think that's really unique. Also, for the ones that aren't like overnight aways, people get to bring their partners. And so you actually get a peek into people's lives and you get to talk to their partner or their friend or whoever their plus one is. And those are really, really connection building moments for a lot of reasons. What's wild about it is this thing happens at work where you go home and you talk to your partner Jen and you tell her about people at goodr.
Yeah.
And until she meets them, she doesn't really know them.
Yeah.
And she now gets the opportunity to connect. So she's connected now. You can connect with her. She's connected closer to you and the brand because of this, which is a really weird thing to think about, but that it is all connecting all of us.
Oh yeah, totally. And it's so funny when the light goes on, like, you're Maya, amazing.
Yeah.
I've heard so much, it's like that moment is great.
And dancing is really important.
So much dancing.
Yeah.
I've never danced so much in my life. I always like remark that before goodr, it was like weddings exclusively. That's it. If you want to see me dance, invite me to a wedding. Otherwise it's not going to happen. And now it's like every Tuesday plus anytime we're doing anything fun for goodr. Yeah. What are you going to do? Cool. So you've invested in connection throughout the life of goodr. What can companies who've been around for a while do to go beyond that standard, happy hour type connection or whatever? Just feels like, all right, we're running this list and feels like we're not getting a lot.
Yeah. I mean, if I was to pick only one thing, it would be to teach and encourage their staff to have more direct conversations, more honest conversations. Yeah. I think both appreciation, right? Telling people how great they're doing, pulling them aside, giving them praise, and then also calling them out when they're not doing good work. There's this thing that happens where if you come into my office, Shaun, and you're like, hey, I'm going to present this idea. Can I get your thoughts? And it's shitty work. And I don't tell you it's shitty work. In that moment, I actually put a wedge between us.
Right.
That was on me. Like I drove a wedge between us instead of connecting us. Because I'm like, hey, there's some issues here. Let me tell you what's going on. X, Y, and Z. That is going to connect us more than anything. And I think if more companies, fuck a ping pong table and in these happy hours, if you were to teach this and encourage it, set the tone for more real conversations with people on both sides, the good and the bad, you would be, head and shoulders ahead of other organizations.
Yeah, for sure. To me, that speaks to valuing the work over the results, like the process, enjoying what you do, right? Because if you're more present for the work and with the people that you're with, that seems a lot more possible than if you're covering your ass and trying to hit some goal and just laser focused on that, right?
For sure. And I think that at the end of the day, so much what we have with most people in the world are just our little conversations.
Yeah.
And if you can just appreciate like those like really like small moments, and you can if you can appreciate those and you can show up for those, it is going to be such a more enjoyable environment for everybody around. Right? It is, and it's a very real thing. I believe in. I was actually just walking downstairs before this episode, and ran into our CFO Brian, and we're talking about a presentation from yesterday, and he's like, I have some feedback. You want me to slide it to you? I was like, is it quick? If it's quick, you can give it to me now. And he's like, X, Y, and Z. I was like, yeah, fair point, got it, check. And it was all good. We moved on with our day, right? And if you can just create that type of environment where somebody can say like, hey, I think we are off in X, Y, and Z, things get a lot better. And it's just more enjoyable for everyone.
Yeah, for sure.
And then you have to lead from top down. So the leadership has to do this too.
Yes, exactly. I was going to say, because if you're not willing to hear that or participate in that conversation, then it's not going to happen. You're not going to have that conversation in the first place. You're not even going to receive the slack if it were to be a slack, right? But people are just going to hold it in, and then that inevitably builds resentment, gossip, back channeling, all that bullshit. So if you want to avoid those things, thing one is be reasonable and respond to things well and be curious and like look to make connection with people so that they can feel comfortable leaning in and sharing what's on their mind.
Yeah, for sure. And then we're talking black belt level. I mean, the base level is just things like, if you have commonality with people in the office, this is the easier stuff, right? I'm a huge Denver Broncos fan, Colorado Avalanche fan. There's some other people from Denver in this office. So we got that connection built in. I'm not talking about that. That stuff's easy, right? Like this is that next level of connection that as leaders, we all should have a responsibility to cultivate.
For sure. And I think that's probably the most difficult thing to start doing, right? Is to recognize I have something that's difficult for me to say. And so I'm taking a risk by saying it. And if I'm willing to go through that, then I can see, hopefully through experience, that it actually builds trust and connection between us, right?
Yeah.
And like you said in the intro, like there's a scenario where we could shut each other down and like train each other out of giving feedback. And hopefully we're trying to avoid doing that. But like, having the courage to say something in the first place is something worth fighting for, because it's hard to speak up and create that opportunity to connect.
Yeah. I mean, I have a practice. I have open office hours. I invite anybody to take them. They can give me feedback. They can ask for help. And this thing that I've noticed where when somebody comes in and if they're going to actually give me critical feedback, I have huge admiration for anybody at this company, anybody anywhere who like shows up to the CEO's office to give them critical feedback.
Right.
And in that moment, my brain flips to like, you can do it. Like in my mind, I'm like, because I want them to do it. And I want to, I don't even, it's quite irrelevant what it is or what it's about. But like, if I can do that and like I can hold that space, it's going to make it okay for them to do this to anybody else at this company.
So you become encouraging to them.
Oh, please. I'm like, oh, let me have it. In my mind, I'm thinking like, oh, let me have it. It's all
nice.
Good. Yeah.
Nice.
I mean, and I would say, I know 75% of the time it's very valid feedback.
Yeah.
I'm like, that is correct. I did fuck that up.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
I mean, if you're not willing to hear it, then how is anyone else going to learn from your example, right?
Yeah.
Nice. All right. So what do you think is the risk of not creating solid opportunities for people to connect?
Yeah. I mean, you probably create distrust. I'll take this a little bit a different way in the sense that I have a handful of friends that work for big tech companies, and a lot of them have not been made to go back to work since the pandemic.
Yeah.
And
like to the office? Or?
To the office.
Yeah, okay.
And they've moved out of the Bay. And there's this general census I get from 4 I can think of where they aren't connected, but they get paid really well.
Yep.
And they get to work remote.
Yeah.
And for them, that's okay. And so I don't want to live in that world. I don't want to, but I think that's okay, right? I mean, I think you're getting way closer to more of a transaction, but
Right.
that's not I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that the lack of a culture, in fact, is the culture. And so I think that, obviously you don't get loyalty. I would argue the work's not as great. I would make some arguments, but if you're a giant SaaS-based company out of the Bay, you probably don't give a fuck because your profit margins are out of control.
Right. Scalable.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah.
But, it's a more harmonious environment. I do believe you get better work because of this on a continuous basis.
And maybe even grow as a person.
Yeah. I mean, what are your thoughts? What is the risk?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think all of those things, including, like you said, like disengagement, all that stuff, just kind of the feeling of like being in a silo and not really having a chance to grow because you're not getting other perspectives. You're not feeling like camaraderie with your coworkers.
Yeah.
Like there's just so much there. Earlier in our conversation, I was thinking like, nobody's really trying to take credit for things. We're trying to give credit away. And I think that's got to be a result of this constant desire to connect with each other as well. See everyone as people, see them for who they are as a complete person and what they're bringing to the table, versus like fighting over scraps of the pie.
That's a good call. There is a general sense of caring around here.
Yeah.
Right. I think that, and a lot goes into that, but that is I think to thrive at goodr, you need to be an incredibly hard worker. You need to be incredibly caring and generous and incredibly self-aware. And I think that there's a lot of connection wrapped up in there that leads to a lot of amazing work.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So you think there's like a bottom line business value to connection?
Oh, for sure. I mean, there's this thing I read in, I think it was Forbes a year or two ago, that companies with a high level of trust outperform the S&P 500 by a factor of 3.
Yeah. So,
Right. And that is a wild stat to drop. And I think that, we run a really amazing company. Our revenue per employee is high. We have, our goal here is the fewest amount of people coached to the highest level. And I believe that stat because I see it here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Same. Absolutely. Can critical feedback or tough conversations count as a form of connection?
Yes, right.
Took it in that direction, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think they are the highest connectors, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's weird because you wouldn't, at least I didn't think of it that way until I started participating in those conversations and realizing, Steven's not going to hold anything back, so I don't have to worry about if there's anything weird, because if there is, he would have told me.
Yeah.
Right? So then everyone can relax because we know we're giving each other the feedback we need to hear, so we can just focus on our work.
Yeah. I mean, did a storytelling workshop, taught 8 people here to coach them to present in front of the company. I had dinner with them last night, so I was talking to Mikey, who's one of them.
Yeah.
On the team, and this is the second time he has thanked me for giving him really critical feedback in front of a group of people because it wasn't like it was mean. It wasn't mean or anything.
Yeah, you're not like ripping him. You're just going, hey, information, right?
Information.
Yeah.
And he's like is profoundly grateful because it helped him level up in another way, right?
Yeah.
And so him responding to me that way makes me like I can coach him even harder, right? Like in a good way, and I know he's gonna respond, and he now has like set the table to like be like really a master because of this, and like that is you better believe like we are connected because of that,
right? Yeah. For sure. What I heard just there is like he's shown you that he's able to, not only willing to, but able to receive whatever information and perspective you have, so you can share it without trying to like pad it or work around ego or anything like that. You just be like, this is what I see.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's a lot easier because I feel like a lot of communication is trying to make sure you don't crack the eggshells or whatever, and the longer you work with someone, you build up trust, the more direct you can be without feeling like you're hurting their feelings or whatever.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, right. It's like why with like really good friends that you've had since childhood. This is top of mind because I just had some in town. I mean, in a non-professional way, I mean, you can just give them shit about stuff and it's totally fine,
right?
Because you have laid that such a solid foundation of connection.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, for sure. So we always try to bring our values to life. And one of the ways that we do that is with assigning supportive and slippery behavior. So can you rattle off a few of those for connection?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give a couple, right? So slippery behavior is like, being unclear, supporting is being clear, or just being direct. And I mean, a really practical example is somebody who has spinach in their teeth, right? Like, hey, if my fly's down, if I have spinach in my teeth, just tell me.
Help me out.
Yeah. Right? Like that for sure is connected, right? So supporting would be, so slippery would be letting somebody like go into a meeting with spinach on their teeth, and supporting would be telling them.
I know,
that's but that's real. If you can't tell somebody the spinach on their teeth, like how are you going to tell them their presentation sucks?
Right.
Another one is slippery would just be blaming, and a supporting would be apologizing. Right. That's a really big thing. To understand.
There's ownership in there too.
Ownership in there. Yeah. And I mean, another one would be hiding, avoiding, telling half truths. In supporting would be transparency. And this example I'll give here is when we were always a Tuesday, Thursday company pre-pandemic.
Yep.
Pandemic happens, we go full remote. Then, we're like that for all of 2020. Numerously, I message out like, hey, if you want to go live somewhere else in the world, like now's the time to do it. Like we don't know when we're going to be back.
Yeah.
And then in early 2021, I started kind of like realizing a few people here had like full on moved, which is all good. But I started realizing I'm like, I think people might think that they're not going to have to come back Tuesdays and Thursdays. And so they're talking in front of the entire company and was very transparent, like, hey, we are going to be back in the office. I don't know when, but I'm saying with 100% certainty, it's going to happen. And we will give you a 3-month heads up. So if we decide it on April 1st, we won't make it mandatory till July 1st, but it will be mandatory. And so I just need everybody to know that. And then flash forward to June, we decided we're going to bring everybody back in September, and did not talk like, hey, it's June 15th. We're going to bring everybody back September 15th. If you have left the state, you're not planning on coming back, it's all good. I get it. People's life change. If you let us know by August 1st, we will work with you. We'll give you severance. We'll do an exit plan. If you tell us August 2nd, that's not going to happen. Yeah. And you're like, well, like, you could look at that a bunch of different ways, but I looked at it as being very direct and very clear. And I heard from numerous people, like, they appreciated it. I think we had 2 people or 3 people move and didn't come back, and that's all good. But there was no room for blaming or any issues because of how clear and direct the message was. And I've heard from people who, quite frankly, didn't want to come back to the office that early, who was like, hey, what I appreciate is you were very clear on the expectations, and so you gave me the decision. Yeah. And right, and like, that is a real tactical example. Like, if you can be really transparent with people, that creates a ton of connection.
For sure. And even just saying, right, like the temptation to game the system and go, all right, I'm just going to wait until it's convenient for me, and then I'm going to tell you, and then we got 2 weeks and blah, blah, blah. You just kind of skip that whole part by being like, look, if you tell us before this date, we'll pretty much work out any kind of plan. And sometimes it was like a 6-month transition period or whatever, but like, skipping that whole bullshit of just like, oh yeah, no, cool, I'm gonna come back, I'm not coming back. Yeah. Like, oh man, what a relief. And it just made it so much easier to plan and hire and all that.
For sure.
Yeah. Cool. So do you have a personal checkpoint that you make to make sure that you're in good connection with others?
I mean, I would say it's a practice, and like anything, sometimes some people it's really easy with, some people it's difficult. I think my immediate family, right? I love them. They're amazing. They live in Colorado in a town called Kaya with no stoplights. And so like I use Todoist, which is just a productivity reminder checklist system. And every Thursday I get a reminder to call one member of my family on the way home from work. Yeah. And so I just pick up the phone. Who did I call last week? Just call somebody different. Right. So that's just one little thing that I try and do. Because that is an out of sight, out of mind. People that I see every day, it's really easy. Yeah. But yeah, so I would say that. And then back to when I'm with somebody, I try and be very present. It's very rarely I'm on my phone if I'm with a person. So I would say there's a little life hack in just setting reminders for the stuff you struggle with. Yep. And then if you can just be present, you're there. How about you?
Love that. Same thing. Phone rule is like not even just flipped over, just out of sight, out of mind. So I'm not even reaching for it. Turn it on, do not disturb, that kind of thing. And then, I build in reminders for everybody's birthday for like 2 weeks before that, buy a gift, and then reminder to say happy birthday on the day. And then like folks that I don't have like a regular call already set up with or connection point with, just like, every month or so, hey, just ping them, say what's up. And then also like a little list of if I find an article that I think would be cool for someone else or is like really in their wheelhouse of interest, I'm like, let's just send it their way. And
that's a good call.
Put a little spot of sunshine in their day, I guess.
Oh, for sure. No, that's a good call.
Yeah. Let's see here. I don't know how there's something like, people don't always remember what happens, but they'll always remember how you make them feel. Yeah. Would you agree with the statement? People always remember how you make them feel?
Oh, for sure. I mean, in my monthly and quarterly one-on-ones with everybody, you have to give feedback but you have to give like appreciation and coaching. And you have an opportunity to really make somebody feel a certain way in that moment. And what's really, really interesting, I think a lot of people, so goodr, I think we encourage connection. We have resources to do, dinners and things outside of work. I think inherently for flock leaders and flock stars, it gets hard to keep up with it. I think it's a really big time commitment.
Yeah.
And in what I was talking to Hannah about, who's my assistant, who we talk all the time, and her and I talk more than anybody, and we spend the first 3 minutes of our weekly one-on-one just like shooting shit about the weekend. I give her appreciation always, and we do this every meeting. And so I was talking to her about this. I go, do you and I ever have to? I was like, how connected do you think we are? Like, do you and I ever have to do anything outside of work? And she's like, no. Right? She's like, no, we are extremely like dialed in. And so, but that is like from a lot of experience. But right, like I give her appreciation all the time. She earns it. Make no mistake about it.
Yeah.
And you flip that around to people or friends in the outside world. I love fashion, so I will comment on what somebody is wearing all the time. Like, I love it, and it makes people feel so amazing. Like, to comment on their hair, their fingernails, or their outfits. It's really weird in the work environment anymore. I'm like, I don't know if this is okay, but that's why. So that's why I said like friends in the outside world.
Yeah.
But if you can take a moment and then make somebody's day, that is a powerful a weapon to have.
Right.
And
Right.
Weapon's
for
the
sure.
right word.
I know.
It's powerful magic. It's a powerful magic.
There you go.
How about you?
Yeah, connection magic. Same thing. Just like looking for opportunities to, I guess, remark on something that someone clearly put a lot of thought into or is like maybe excited about. But yeah, I think it may be more than what happens or what is said. The feeling that is the thing that sticks with me the longest in most any interaction, and that ultimately becomes like a kind of like an internal picture of the person to me. Is like, when I think of them, like the way that I feel around them most often is like what comes to me. It's not like, we had this conversation and that conversation. It's just like, that's kind of how they are, and that's kind of like what you're saying of building up a long-term connection or a foundational relationship with someone. Is the more reps you have or the more investment you put into that, the more complete that picture can be, versus just like, you've got a couple sticky notes or something instead of like a masterpiece. Yeah,
for sure. And again, this goes back to it happens over time with stacking of small moments.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Worth it for sure. So what is a vision for wild success for connection that you have for goodr that would go beyond anything you've dreamed up so far?
Oh man, I mean, I think this would be a tall tale to ask, but we'll do a podcast on words. But I think if we got to a place where everybody here could use their words correctly and they could ask for exactly what they wanted, they could communicate like in a fully transparent way, it would be, I don't know, a wild utopia, right?
Yeah.
That's where my mind went of just, if we created a world where everybody here can, coolly, calmly, like set boundaries, like ask for what they want, tell people no, that would be quite incredible.
Yeah. Well, we're working on it.
Yeah, we're working on it. I think we're in a pretty good place, but yeah.
For sure. It's like you got to train confidence, clarity, courage, all those things. That's a little alliteration there. Well, I'm sure there's other things, but...
Yeah, and depersonalizing, right? I mean, I fuck stuff up all the time where you have to depersonalize when you're just stating facts, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that right, this is why it would be really, really hard. But one of the reasons I think we're so bad at feedback is we as people, we are so worried about what the other person's going to say. Mm-hmm. And right. And like, if we get to a place where we give feedback, like we report the weather, like what's the temperature out, or what time is it? 4:02.
Yeah.
Right. It's 4:02. How's the presentation? Like, it's pretty sloppy. It was confusing. Saw a lot of image mistakes, and I'm not sure what the actual message was. Mm-hmm. Right. If you could just like the person was like, oh, go on.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Or no, if they weren't. Oh, okay. If they were like, oh man, really? Let's hear it.
Right.
Like if people could just show up in that way, it would be quite incredible.
Yeah. Right. Because if your goal is to give a great presentation, you're not trying to nurse your wounds for getting feedback that it wasn't great. You're trying to figure out how to make it great.
Yeah. For sure.
Awesome. All right, well, let's head over to Circle Bar here. What's one thing you want to answer again or didn't get to bring it up?
I mean, I don't know. I think I got everything. How about you? Anything you want to get in on?
I feel like we pretty much covered it. Any like advice, next actions, something to kind of summarize it? What's the...
Well, right. I think if you're struggling with connection, right, whether it's maybe it's your siblings or friends from back home, what Shaun and I talked about, like setting reminders. So if you have a system, I mean, you can easily put something in your calendar, but like there is ways to set up systems to like reach out to the people that mean stuff to you. And so I really would really, really encourage that. And then if you're an organization or a team, I would spend all of my energy on creating spaces for people to have better, more direct conversations more often instead of working on buying a ping pong table or setting up a happy hour or trust falls.
Yeah, right, for sure. Oh man, pro tip on the direct conversations. Can't tell you how many times this has happened in like coaching calls, but 9 times out of 10, you're already telling someone else the exact thing you think, feel, and want someone to hear. Yeah. You're just telling the wrong person. Right?
Yeah.
So like listen to what you're saying when you're talking to a friend or a coworker, or maybe it's coming out as gossip or complaining. Whatever you're saying is like, that's if you just point that toward the person who needs to hear it, you've got your tough conversation mapped out completely, and it's probably going to go very well.
Yeah. That's good. That's actually an amazing tip. I was actually just thinking about a recent example of that. I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what I was doing.
Right.
Check.
Because we know it.
Yeah.
It's hard to just say it.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. Well, thanks, Stephen. Thanks everybody for listening. Until next time, be excellent to each other.
Thanks for listening to the Culture Goodr podcast. To submit questions for the podcast, learn more about our culture, and learn how you can status the quote challenge, head over to goodr.com/culture. And don't forget to subscribe to us wherever you're listening, including on YouTube, where you can now watch all of our new episodes. Who knows? You might even catch a glimpse of Carl at our headquarters if he's not already passed out at the tiki bar from all the margaritas.